side.
Right. That's just to let you know that obviously we're recording. I try and keep it as kind of like neutral and as organic as I can. I don't really do any of the fancy stuff. Let's have a look. Can you just see yourself or can you see me as well?
I can see both.
Okay, because I can only see you, but that's all right. I'm just making sure. I haven't used Zoom in absolutely ages. But before we start, I'm Abs of October Red Boxing. And I'm joined by, I'm going to say you're a CEO, a personal trainer, but specializing in strength and conditioning. Duncan, and I'm going to say you're to say your surname, so I'll make sure I get it right.
Yeah, it's Ogilvie.
Ogilvie. See,
Yeah,
I would have
yeah.
said Ogilvie.
That's
Ogilvie.
right. No one
Welcome.
really gets it right. So
And nobody gets my name right. That's why I've shortened it to Ab. So we're kind of like we're neutral on that.
yeah,
Thank you so much for joining.
it's all good.
You're abroad. Are you in? Is it Miami at the moment?
Just north of Miami, so in a place called Delray. So it's about 45 minutes north.
Okay, nice one. But we're going to get our audience to know you a little bit. I met you at Lawrence's last fight in Manchester, in the dressing room as he was doing his post-fight press conference. But for our guests, let our guests get to know you. Duncan, just let us know a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I don't necessarily work just in boxing. I work in a number of different sports. Formerly, I was a professional basketball player. So I played in America for 5 years and then all over Europe for like Spain, France, Greece for 8 years. Represented the national teams of England. And then I decided to retire and kind of moved into strength and conditioning. Started working with the national basketball team. I was actually the first person to give me my job. My first job with the national basketball team is a guy called Duncan French, who is currently the head of performance for the UFC. So it's kind of, he come back to combat sports, but he was the first guy to give me an opportunity as a strength and conditioning coach to work with the women's national team, and then ran a few programs, predominantly in basketball. Started a business called Do Training and Performance. Got a contract with the University of East London, which is where I've been based now for about 8 years. So I run the whole gym there, have 4 members of staff and about 10 interns. And we cater for about 250 athletes, have contracts with, I train premiership referees, footballers, basketball players, volleyball players, and then boxers. So Lawrence, who I'm out in Florida with right now, Lawrence Okolie'S, current cruiserweight world champion. He was the first boxer I trained. He walked in the gym when he was a student at UEL and said, I want you to train me. I want to be a world champion. And I was like, I don't know nothing about boxing. So, but yeah, sure. Let's have a little chat. And then crazy 6 months for him. He ended up getting selected for GB. Within that 6 months, won the European title, European Championships, which made him qualify for the Olympics. Post-Olympics, he turned professional, and then I started working with him and kind of snowballed from there. So I ended up working, I think at my peak in boxing so far, I've had 12 professional fighters working directly with me, but I'm about 6 now. So.
Wow. What a way to start off, an experienced sportsman that decided to hang up the basketball boots and then get into the strength and conditioning side. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, why did you start basketball? Was it an injury or it was just kind of like your time to phase out?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of everything. I actually had 6 knee surgeries throughout my career. But looking back, having those injuries kind of pushed me towards strength and conditioning because I worked with a coach to rehab from that. And I thought, this is a really cool job. This is something that I'm interested in doing post basketball. I was never I wasn't like an NBA level player or top level in Europe. I was like 2nd or 3rd tier. So the money I was making, while it was good and I could live a good life and have some good money, it wasn't something I could retire off. So I was well aware I needed a new career. And then, yeah, I was 31. The economy was going down, so the money available was less. Teams were folding. budgets were decreasing, and then there was opportunities in strength and conditioning that were presenting themselves. And at some point, I would have had to make that decision, and I just thought, why not?
How did you find that gap? Because, like you said, the economy was kind of like on the downhill, but you still thought, okay, I've still got to do something. Because sometimes when things stop, people tend to stop with it, is what I'm getting at. They give up and they think, oh, what am I going to do now? And then they end up getting like a 9-to-5, a day job, and all of that expertise kind of goes to one side. So what was it about you that kind of like thought, I really need to, I want to stay in sports, and I'm going to become self-employed and make my own money? Where did that entrepreneur mindset come from?
I think I've always had a bit of an entrepreneur spirit. Even when I was in primary school and secondary school, I used to buy a bunch of sweets and take them to school and sell them for a profit. Just little things like that. But no, I don't know. I'm not a 9-to-5er. I love sport. I love the working in sport, working with different athletes, working with the challenges, the cultures, the mentalities, the egos. There's no one day is the same. I mean, today I've had a video call from the basketball girls that are working out in the gym in London, and then I'm going to the gym here in Florida to train, and then later I'm doing a couple of meetings, and tomorrow it'll be totally different. I couldn't sit in an office and just work a 9-to-5 and work for someone and kind of support someone else's dreams. I want to chase my dreams, and so I became self-employed. And now I built a company to where I can help other coaches kind of pursue their dreams as well. And some of the coaches that work under me, they work for me, but I really encourage them to create their own stuff, work with individual athletes, private, and build their own business, their own brands, and push on. So.
Kind of like teaching them how to be entrepreneurs as well, making sure that they've got something to rely on, because that kind of like takes a little bit of pressure off you. Say you decide to go off and maybe you incorporate the company somewhere else, and then you've got, like you said, you might have people left jobless. But if you're teaching them from now, look, you've got to still have that entrepreneurial mindset. Yes, you work for me, but make sure you're developing your own craft as well. It's kind of like a just in case, and keeping them to have that ambition, because when you're employed for somebody, you can sometimes you get a bit lazy because that comfort blanket's there, and you're still encouraging your staff members, look, okay, we've got this, but you've still got to be able to think for yourself.
Yeah, and I think through the internship that I run, you just have so many conversations about there's no jobs in S&C, and there's plenty of jobs. There's plenty of professional athletes. There's plenty of people that want expertise so they can push to the next level. You just have to cultivate that and pursue it and find your niche and create something. And I believe if you're good at what you do, whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's running podcasts, whether it's working in a bank, if you're good at what you do, you're always going to get work. So I'm never really stressed about that because I know I provide a good product, a good service, and I'm a good person. So I'm always going to win. And
Winner's
that's kind of my
mentality.
mentality. Yeah.
It's spot on. Do training then. Is it just as in let's get on with it, just do the training? Where did that name come from?
It's funny. I'll give her
Or
a
is it
shout
just
out.
your initials?
Yeah, well, it's a former girlfriend that I used to date when I played basketball, and we were talking about my career post basketball. I said I want to do this, and I don't know what to name my company, and she said, "Well, do training," and I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Duncan OLGIVIE training, but do training, go do training," and I said, "Oh, that's perfect, done, sorted." So that was it. So yeah, shout out to Kim Butler who came up with the name.
That is the first time I've ever heard anyone shout out their ex. So I take it you two went your separate ways on good terms.
Yeah, I guess so. But now she came up with a name, so I'll give her props.
We like it. Lawrence
Yeah.
Okolie'S, you said, came into your gym, and I can touch on him because obviously that's how I met you. He came into the gym when you were at the uni, and you said you knew nothing about boxing. Because strength and conditioning, I'm sure, as you know, as a qualified strength and conditioning coach, it's sports specific. You're training different things for different body parts. I get that there's a baseline, and I say that because I'm trained in personal training myself, but boxing is kind of like sports specific. So he was kind of like your project, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, he was skinny and weak and couldn't really move. But he was a natural talent. I'm not going to sit here and say that he didn't have talent. Like, he could punch really hard, and he just had something about him that obviously elevated him from I mean, he had some balls too. I think he was just calling up professional boxers and just saying, I'll come spar you. I'm 6'5", I can punch, let me spar you. And I think he ended up sparring AJ. And that's kind of how GB said, oh, what's your professional record? And he's like, well, I'm an amateur. And they were like, oh shit, well, maybe you should come here. So yeah, he was a natural talent, and he's kind of, one of his former coaches used to call him a unicorn. Because he's just special. He has something about him. But yeah, from a boxing perspective, I knew who Mike Tyson was. I knew who Lennox Lewis was. But I'd never been to a boxing match live. I had no real interest in boxing. But I know how to train athletes, and I know how to analyze a sport and figure out what that athlete needs to be successful at that sport. So, I mean, I probably trained 50 different sports in my career, if not more. There's lots of similarities in how you train someone to be good at a sport, because you want them to be powerful, quick, reactive, resilient, robust. But then you get to the nuances of the actual sport. So punching power, shoulder health, neck strength, grip strength, forearm strength. These sort of things are very important in boxing. So,
and I'm going to sound a little bit geeky, but shoulder health is something that is so important in boxing. Most of the injuries that fighters have, it's always that rotator cuff. It's always a shoulder injury. You see them strapped up in hospital after fights. How important is it? And like I said, this is the geek in me, but how important is it to maintain, those body parts that you are really putting under repetitive and sometimes strenuous pressure?
Yeah, I mean, a quote that I heard a long time ago at a conference was, an injured athlete is a useless athlete, as a commodity, right? So if you're a basketball player, a football player, and you can't play, you can't earn your living. So you might be under contract, but once that contract finishes, you're screwed. Boxing's way different. If you're not fighting, you're not earning. There's no kind of monthly salary in boxing. So you've got my number one job, and my focus and what I try and preach to everyone is I've got to keep the athlete healthy. Like, that's paramount. If they're healthy, they're going to participate in their sport more. They're going to work with good trainers more, and they're going to get better. So if they're not healthy, they can't do that. Then it's like, okay, they're healthy, so now how can I improve their performance and add value to them in the boxing ring?
And we know that, obviously, like I said, you train Lawrence. That's just something I was interested in. You've trained. There's so much going on in boxing, and Duncan, I'm thinking where to start. I want to stick with Lawrence, but it seems like, obviously, you and Lawrence found each other, and you've continuously worked with each other. And wherever Lawrence goes, you've always been there with him. Because obviously, I probably know Lawrence from being in the McGuigan's gym, because that's who was training him. That's who I saw training him. I'm not saying he wasn't trained by anybody else, but that's who I remember. That's when he caught my eye. So you were there in that gym. So did you do any of the strength and conditioning for the other fighters as well, or was it just Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of give you a little timeline if it just makes it a bit easier. So I started working with Lawrence when he turned, before he was professional, when he was an amateur. Then he turned professional. He randomly said, I want you in my corner. So I had to go get my seconds license. That's another story. So I ended up being in his corner from fight one. I didn't have to do anything because the first 4 fights ended in the first round. So that was cool. The 5th fight, when I had to put the stool in for the first time, that was amusing. But yeah, so I worked with him, and he obviously had at the time a management company, 258, with AJ. Josh Buatsi needed a coach. I had a good relationship with him, got on well with him. So I started working with him. So that was 2 boxers. And then a couple of people saw what I was doing, wanted to work with me. So I had 3 or 4, and then Lawrence changed coach from Brian to a guy called Barry. That was interesting. Barry was a very vocal, flamboyant character from America. They had a few fights together, and then Lawrence decided to work with Shane. So we walked into the gym in Wandsworth with Shane, and Lawrence was like, this is my strength and conditioning coach. This is my nutritionist. We're coming to work with you as our coach. As you expect, Shane was a bit hesitant at that. He's like, I want control over everything. I'm not sure, but we developed a relationship, and that relationship became quite good. He saw what I was doing, he saw the qualities I was adding to Lawrence and the type of person I was. So he asked me to work with his other boxers. So I did some work with Luke Campbell. Who else was in the gym? We had Anthony Fowler and then Chris Billam-Smith. And so I worked with them for 3 or 4 years. And then, well, about 3 years, lockdown happened. Everything was a bit of a mess. We were training out of Kent by this time. So I think I had 4 boxers. Then we moved to London, or Shane moved to London. And I started working with his whole stable because his stable grew from like 4 to 10 or something. So we had the Dubois, the Azims, Robbie Davis Jr., Ellie, Scotney. For me, it just became something that wasn't like viable for me. It was just too many boxers, too many events. And when I work with a boxer, can I add value to that person? Do I believe in who they are and what they want to achieve, and are they the type of person I want to work with? And then obviously the third one is like, is it going to be financially like viable for me to do this? And it just became, it wasn't financially viable for me to train all those athletes and travel all over the country and this, that, and the other. So I moved away from Shane, totally fine, no issues. Started working privately, not privately, but directly with the boxers. So I continued to work with Chris, Ellie and Fowler. And then obviously I stopped working with Chris about 6 months ago after getting on for a year ago, actually, after the Isaac Chamberlain fight, because I think once Lawrence left Shane, we kind of envisaged those paths crossing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so I haven't worked with Chris for about 10 months. Still work with Ellie. Fowler's taking time out / retired, whatever he's choosing to do. Still work with Josh when he's in England, and I'll help him out on fight week. And then I've got a few small hall show boxers, so Obi, Harry Mullins, an amateur called Micah, Patrice and Billy. So they'll be pros in the coming year. So yeah, that's the timeline of my boxing journey.
No, but it lays it out, and it makes sense, because now I can actually see what's gone on. So we still run off the fact that Lawrence Okolie's kind of like the core, kind of like the original in here. And one thing I will say, and I do admire it in boxing, is the fact that you've obviously kept that loyalty running. I understand it's a business relationship. Nobody's doing nothing for free. However, you've still got that kind of like bond with you two. And like you said, it got to the point where you realize that, okay, there's going to be some changes afoot, and there's a possibility that Chris and Lawrence, is what's happening now, they may end up fighting each other. So you kind of like stopped that and then carried on with Lawrence. Your thoughts on their bout? You know, I saw you at the presser the other day. Of course, you're going to back Lawrence, but you know the both of them, you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses, as does Shane. But your thoughts on it from a S&C power point of view, your expertise.
In regard to the fight, well, yeah, I mean, when it was announced or when there was rumors of it, I was like, yeah, this fight's never gonna happen. Like, I can't see it. And then it just made sense. It made sense for both parties. Like, I'm really good friends with Chris. He's a lovely guy. So obviously, like, Mia, his wife's lovely. I've met Frank the kid. Like, they're really nice people, and I've met their whole families when we were down in Bournemouth training. So yeah, when the fight was announced, I said this will be interesting. See how the dynamic is. And I had a chat to Chris, you know, and said, hey, all good. Just make sure you work really hard, you come in the best shape, bring the best Chris Billam-Smith on the night. And I'm really happy for him, because it's his dream to have a fight in his hometown football stadium for a world title. It's just unfortunate that he's going to be fighting Lawrence, and, you know, it is what it is. But for me, I think when I look at it from an S&C perspective, Chris is he's less talented as a boxer than Lawrence, but he works extremely hard and he makes the very most out of the talent that he has. And Shane, as a great coach, has really helped Chris develop in the last few years. Chris will do everything he can to get the best out of it, because he knows he might not match up against other boxers talent-wise. So he's got to put in the extra work and get the little wins elsewhere one thing Chris has is a fantastic engine, so we know he's going to be in great shape. He's going to be able to do the 12 rounds and go hard for those 12 rounds. Physically, he's a strong guy. He can move. He's developed really well over the last few fights. I mean, his knockout in his last fight was fantastic. Nice little combination, but he's susceptible. He does get hurt. I'm not a boxing coach. I don't pretend to be a boxing coach. I have my seconds license. I have my manager's license, but I'm not going to tell someone technically. I've been in 60 odd corners, but I stay in my lane. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you technically what the game plan is and how we're going to win the fight or whatever. But it'll be an interesting fight. It'll be a good fight. And the one thing that I love is that the Lawrence that is training right now and the motivation that he has is something I haven't seen yet in his career. He is super motivated for this fight. And the last few fights, it's been really hard to motivate him for a lot of different reasons. Mandatories that he doesn't really want to fight, but he has to fight, not getting unifications, dealing with his promotional issues, and things like that. But now I just see a different beast. So I'm really excited for the Lawrence Okolie'S that's going to show up in Bournemouth. And hence why I'm out in Florida now, because we're really buying in and really pushing the envelope for him.
Lawrence mentioned, his last performance that, he was tired. Obviously the inactivity, it plays a part. That you can train as much as you like, but when you get in that ring, he's going in there with pressure. I would say he's going in there with pressure. It's a new promotional team, new coach, as it were. Everything's kind of like new for him. So all of that is going to add to his nerves and probably make him gas quicker than he would have. You've said now that you're out there with him. You're doing, obviously, a full camp. And I say that is because something that he said, he was tired, like his engine, it wasn't there. So looking at that now, how is that improving?
I mean, from my perspective, the biggest challenge for me, post kind of those learning fights, so, 8, 9 fights in his career, we have gaps. And Lawrence would take a break and then, eat food and go away and things like this. So it would drive me nuts, because then we'd come back into camp and we'd have to start first losing weight, and we'd spend the first few weeks of camp, first few months, getting back to where we were, and then we could start building. Because I always want to see each camp as a stepping stone to the next one, not just one individual camp. And that's, for me, the frustrating thing about working in boxing, because it's like, we have a camp and then we don't do shit for ages, and then we start again with the camp. And it's like, nah, if you want to be a true athlete, you've got to put building block on building block on building block.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about this. We've had 1 week off, boom, straight back into camp. And the best thing is, it's a huge fight. It's a lot on the line. And I really rate Lawrence for taking this fight. He didn't have to. You know what I mean? It's like, he's world champion. He's going into Chris's backyard. There's 95% of the people at the venue, if not more, are going to be supporting Chris. Do you know what I mean? All these things, factors, but he's like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't hesitate once. He's like, yeah, cool. It'll be fun. Like, there's something to dig my teeth into and really get motivated and do it. So, yeah, we're in a good place. The last camp was a bit of a shambles for various different reasons. I wasn't able to get out to Florida. We had a new coach. It takes time to adjust. So I did a little bit of him in Dubai before he went to work with the new coach, Sugar. And then he had like 6 or 7 weeks, maybe a little less in Florida. I wasn't able to come out for work commitments. And then we met in Morecambe like 10 days before the fight. And I was like, we're not in a great place physically, but fortunately, we're not facing someone like Chris Billam-Smith. We're facing David Light. No disrespect to him. He brought the best David Light on the night and took Lawrence 12 rounds, which no one expected. But rest assured, that was the David Light is not going to be anywhere near the Lawrence that is coming in Bournemouth.
Yeah, his attitude at the press conference, and by no means I'm asking you to speak for him, but his attitude was when kind of like Chris has got the home advantage, he's going to be there, he's going to be surrounded by fans. And Lawrence was kind of like matter of fact and kind of like said, well, I was booed in my last fight, yeah. And kind of like he was matter of fact. Everyone thought he was funny, but he was telling the truth. And he's got that attitude about him, not like nonchalant. I won't say that he's nonchalant, but he's kind of like, I'm just going to get on with it anyway. Is that what he's like in the gym? Kind of like, you know, just doesn't really get phased by stuff like that.
No, I don't think so. He's never really been like that. And he, after the Chamberlain fight, which was our ninth fight, Lawrence was still very raw boxer. He got a lot of slack for being a very boring fight. But if you look back to that first round at Chamberlain, he absolutely bashed the shit out of Chamberlain, dropped him, and Chamberlain was just shook. So then the second round, Chamberlain came out with a totally different game plan, which made it very, very ugly. And Lawrence just didn't have the skill set to deal with keeping the distance and breaking, and then got labelled a hugger. The same thing happened against Matty Askin. Dominated the first round, absolutely bashed him. Askin came in with this game plan after that first round. He's like, I can't do this game plan. I'm going to get stopped in 2-3 rounds. Let me make it really ugly. So after those two fights, he got a lot of slack for being an ugly boxer, boring boxer. But he's just awkward, and people don't really know how to deal with the awkwardness. If someone comes up and squares up to him and wants to fight him, look what happens. Luke Watkins gets knocked out in 2-3 rounds. You know what I mean? Any time, even in the Sizlak fight 2 fights ago, the first round or second round, he dropped him, hit him really hard. Like the game plan changed. And Sizlak was super, super tough. I don't hear any cruiserweight in the world calling out Sizlak, and there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? He's a super tough fighter. And we expect Chris to be a very similar fight for Lawrence, like very, very tough fight. So he's not bothered. He knows what he can do really well. He knows what he needs to work on. And he's working with Sugar now, so he's really developing some good skills. I see it just in 3-4 days here, just developing, starting to buy into what Sugar's trying to teach him. And yeah, he's continually developing, and I don't think we've come close to seeing the best of Lawrence yet. But like I said, he doesn't respectfully give a fuck. He knows what he's doing. He's on his own journey. Boxing is him. He doesn't need anyone else's
Approval
congratulations or
kind of
whatever.
thing.
Yeah. He's like, I'm doing this. I'm world champion. None of the other world champions even want to fight him. And I don't care what social media says or ducking this, that, and the other. It's like they legitimately have been offered the fight and haven't taken it. You know, and if you're asking for like 3, 4, 5 times more than what you've ever been paid to fight him, there's a reason for that, because it's like, well, I'm going to lose my belt, so I might as well get paid out. Or I'm going to give an unreasonable amount of money, ask for an unreasonable amount of money, so they don't accept the fight or whatever. So it's, he's a dangerous guy at cruiserweight and will be a dangerous guy at heavyweight, and he's going to cause anyone's problems. And ultimately, this is his profession. And if he keeps winning, he's going to retire a rich man and support his family and all those sort of things. And no one will care. They'll just be like, oh, that's the unified world champion, whatever. Now look at him living his best life. Like, you get what I mean?
We do get that kind of mentality from the fighters these days. They're more concerned about leaving with, you know, all their marbles intact, one for a better word, and kind of like that business mindset where they want to make sure that they've got their money, because we've seen retired fighters. I understand that some retired fighters come back later because, you know, it's that buzz. There's nothing quite like it. But then there's some fighters that will come back because they're broke and they need some money. So it's nice to see kind of like our generation of fighters, they're starting to make these strategic business decisions based on long-term financial, you know, support for themselves and their family. Something that you have touched on there, Duncan, and it was the change. And I know I spoke to Lawrence about it briefly. And like I said, I can't ask you to speak for him, but the changes that he went through, you mentioned obviously with the promotional company, you mentioned about sort of mandatories that he may not have wanted to have. There's all this kind of additional pressure, etc., on him. That, like, mentally, because you know him probably better than everybody, because you're the one that's been around him professionally the longest. What kind of effect can that, you know, have on a fighter? Because everyone says Lawrence Okolie is not the best to watch, but he always finds a way to win.
And that's in any sport, that's what the greats do. You might not show up and be your best every day, but you find a way to win. You know, like you might get a guy sent off, but you find a way to camber together and find a way to win, and that's what champions do. Like, trust me, he wants to be entertaining. He wants the big knockouts or whatever, but If it doesn't come, he's still going to find a way to win the fight. If the tactics of the other team don't allow him to, knock someone out in spectacular fashion, then cool, he's still going to win every round relatively easily. And yeah, I remember when we won the world title. I mean, he's never shied away from a fight. He jumped in with Matty Askin, who at the time no one wanted to fight. 0 people in England wanted to fight. He said, "Yeah, I'll take that fight." And then it was, I think it was Ngannou for the European title. Again, someone that was a very, very tough fighter. And then, then Glowacki. It was like the Glowacki fight was meant to happen probably a year before, but COVID kind of derailed that. Because I think it was May, the year that COVID happened, that we'd scheduled that fight, but it never happened. So it was the following year. And when we won that fight after the look, I said, "Well done, mate. All right, now time to unify. Let's go get the green belt. Let's go get Goulamari, and let's, go get Bradis." And the Bradis fight was there. Like, we were really really wanted that fight. Did everything.
That was so frustrating.
Yeah, and it's from my perspective, I can't stand boxing as a sport for all the bullshit that people talk when you actually know the ins and outs of things. But the Bradis fight should have happened. It didn't, for whatever reason. It was nothing to do with Lawrence. And then it was like, well, we can't get these belts, and then a mandatory comes, and I'm trying to remember the first mandatory we had, but it wasn't a great fight. It wasn't someone that was going to challenge Lawrence, and I think he stopped him relatively quickly. It was Pestovic, I think, on that AJ undercard. And then we had Sislak, who was a super, super tough fighter. He should have beaten Makabu in Congo. He lost a split decision in
Did he drop
Congo.
him? He dropped him, didn't he? He dropped Makabu, didn't he? Sislak.
Possibly, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And he should have won. And if you're losing a split decision in the Congo, probably you won that fight. And then he gave Lawrence a really tough fight. And then obviously we had the last the mandatory with David Light, who again he's earned the right to do that. You can't take that away from him. He's worked really hard to get to that position and been given it. And Lawrence has to take that fight or lose his belt because he can't get another fight. And then it's like, well, who do I fight now? None of the world champions want to fight me. Chris is bang up for it. Let's do it. So this is a really interesting fight. It's got him really excited. There's lots of narratives, like the narrative of me that trained both of them, the narrative that Shane, that is the coach of Lawrence for a long time, coach of Chris, brought Chris from the amateurs.
Yeah, it's an incredible backstory.
Yeah, it's great. So the more people that can buy into that story, makes it a very entertaining or a very interesting watch. And I'm sure Chris is going to have a great game plan because that's what he's great at. He's great at devising plans to beat people. But Lawrence will have a better game plan and find a way to get the job done.
Do you and your team and Lawrence think that, because that's the one thing that always makes me nervous. I always like to put boxing into real life scenarios, and it's like I was really good friends with somebody and I've opened up to that friend, and that friend knows a lot of maybe deep and dark secrets about me, as much as I would have let go to that person. And then all of a sudden they start a friendship with somebody, our friendship folds, and then they form a friendship with someone that I don't necessarily like. Now I know that person. There's a good possibility that that person will know my deep, my dark secrets, my vulnerabilities, stuff like that. And that's what I see when I see this fight. I'm not saying that has happened. However, it is a vulnerability. And how do you and the team feel about that? And how do you intend to deal with that possibility?
I think ultimately, it comes down to the person, right? So if someone wants to bring up some dirt, I'm sure they can. I'm sure everyone involved in this situation, in fact, I know everyone involved in this situation knows dirt on each other, but it's integrity. There's certain things you don't speak on, you don't need to bring up, but if it does get brought up, maybe it goes down a way that it doesn't have to. But I don't think it matters.
Even in the ring, the game plan in the ring, Lawrence might do this, that shows a vulnerability there that we can attack that. Do you know what I mean? Do you see where I'm coming from?
But, yeah, but it's tactics, right? he might do that, but then it's one thing saying, yeah, he's going to do this, but then it's another thing actually getting him to do it, or finding that vulnerability. And then like the game plan that he brings, every single fighter has gone in there with a game plan, but then that game plan has changed because they've been hit and they've been like, I can't execute it. And, you know, we're going to ride that until we fall off, I guess, because that Lawrence, no one can execute a game plan against Lawrence that's been successful. So we'll wait and see. But he's not bothered. He knows that he's got, if he brings himself on the night, then he knows he's going to do the job, and that's just a confidence that is great to see. It's not an arrogance; it's just a confidence. He believes truly that he can't be beaten. So we'll see. We'll see on the night. I'm excited to see it.
The gelling then that he's having with, you know, with Sugar. I spoke to Richard Ratport earlier on in the week, and he was saying that he doesn't believe that Sugar Hill, and everyone's going to have opinions. I get it. No one gives a toss, but this is just me putting some feedback to you that may come from the viewers, the fans as well. But I can say that I spoke to Richard, and he was saying that the style that Lawrence has got, he doesn't think that's suited to Sugar Hill. And he thought, he was saying that the best thing to do is for him to go back to Shane, because he doesn't believe that the Sugar Hill, the Kronk style is suited to Lawrence. I mean, fire back. I haven't finished the question, but fire back. I can see you like.
It's irrelevant what Richard thinks. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's knowledgeable on boxing, but it's irrelevant. It's literally nothing matters. It's the relationship that Lawrence has with Sugar, and are they gelling? Are they getting things done? And time will tell. I'm seeing stuff in the gym that I'm really liking. From my perspective, again, I'm not a boxing coach, but I'm saying, hey, that's if that works, if he can do that, that's going to be really good for moving forward, making him a better athlete, making him a better boxer. And then I'm trying to complement that with the stuff that I do in the weight room, or ensuring that he's in condition enough to be able to execute the plan that Sugar wants him to do, or the style that Sugar wants him to work with. So yeah, everyone can have opinions. It's the beauty of the sport. That's why you have your channel, because everyone wants to hear people's opinions. But reality is, we're going to the gym in about half an hour and no one's opinion fucking matters. It's just going to be one voice telling Lawrence what to do, and he's going to be doing it. So that's my opinion on it.
No, we like it, but this is it. It's a debate, and it's a common question, and it won't just come from, say, an opposition camp. It will just come from the, you know, the public in general. Are their styles going to gel? Which you've kind of like, you've answered that. They're working together. Time will tell. You're seeing improvements in the gym. We can't really go into any further detail, that rather than me getting a camera and coming in and filming it. So
yeah, and it's one of those things, like Lawrence is the boss of his own career. Like that's the beauty of boxing. You're alone. It's an individual sport. It's like tennis, swimming, track and field. Like boxing, you're by yourself. So you are 100% responsible for your career. You don't have teammates to.
true.
If you're feeling shit, you don't have 10 other players on the pitch that can make up for your bad performance. Like if you have a bad performance in the boxing ring, you're either going to lose or win ugly or whatever it may be. Like, so he's made a decision that he believes is best for his career. I've given my opinion on that, whether if he's asked for it, and then he's the boss. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to back you, and that's what I try and do with all my athletes. Like I buy into what they want to achieve, and that's why you have successful relationships with your athletes. Like I knew Chris's goals, I knew what he wanted to achieve, and I fully bought into that and tried to add my value to that. I know exactly what Lawrence wants to achieve, and where he wants to go with boxing. So it's like, well, how can I aid that progression? It's not about me, it's not about Sugar, it's about Lawrence. And there's a lot of coaches involved in the sport of boxing, or just the sports in general, that make it about them. And nah, everything that's done should benefit Lawrence, whether you're the manager, whether you're the S&C coach, whether you're the boxing coach. Everything should be working together so it benefits one person in the ring. And yes, you can be rewarded for that, whether it's financially or fame or whatever it may be, but ultimately it's not about you. And if a coach can, and it's Sugar, it's not about him. He's like, oh, let me help Lawrence on his path and make him a better boxer so he can win fights and, you know, build his legacy.
Yeah, I spoke to Sugar, and he was kind of like, when he first like saw Lawrence's like performance, he was like, kind of like, what? He said, how is he a world champion with that style? But then he said he saw there's certain things that he knew that he'd be able to work with to obviously improve. When you first met and Lawrence obviously discussed with you, okay, I'm going to change my coach, and I think I'm going to go with, the Crunk Gym. I think I'm going to go with Sugar. What were your initial thoughts on that? How did you feel about it?
Honestly, I didn't necessarily have an opinion.
Okay.
That would at the time he wanted to move to Dubai. He wanted a change of lifestyle. He moved to Dubai, and I said, like, if you move to Dubai, there's nothing there really of an elite level for boxing yet. Like, I think it's coming, but um, so what's going to be best? Oh, we'll find a coach. We'll figure it out. Like, I'll talk to some people. Blah, blah. I said, cool. And he said, yeah, we got a coach. I like him. We're going to go work together, try some things out. Spoke to him after a few days. Yeah, it's calm. It's good. I was like, all right, good for me. And then I was eager to meet him so I could build my own relationship with him, because I've got to work with him too. And yeah, he's a great guy. I really like him. He's a laugh. He's chilled. His personality is easy to get on with. And like a different style to Shane, definitely. A different personality to Shane, but I got a lot of time for Sugar. And I enjoy like working with him.
Like you said, the proof is going to be in the pudding. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on with you, Duncan, and it's just Ellie Scotney. You mentioned that's one of the fighters that you do the S&C for. Obviously, she was supposed to be on the card over in Ireland on the undercard for the Katie Taylor fight. Everyone was looking forward to that with Chantal Cameron. However, she's not on the card anymore. We saw both sides release your statements. Everyone's got their reasons on why she should be on there, and why we don't think it's best. So just Ellie, and it kind of like, just your opinion on it from kind of like Ellie's side, because you would have been there. This is a massive card, big headline, and it's kind of like, well, actually, you're not on it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, the fight that we've had for the world title, since she got made mandatory, it's been dragging on a little bit. I think we were meant to have a fight. She got the girl got an extension for a medical exemption and
Okay.
delayed it. And it's just for
Right.
my job. It's just my job was just to keep Ellie motivated, because camp was, it was a 8-week camp. Then now it's a 12-week camp. Now it's a 14-week camp. And then all of a sudden it's
Okay.
like, okay, keep going. We've got this. We're building blocks. We're getting better. So yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, from her perspective, it's a paycheck that's getting delayed, but and it's an opportunity to win a world title. But yeah, when the fight was announced, when she told me a few days before it became official, it was announced to the public, I was like, this is fantastic. Like, Katie's one of your idols. Like, this is a dream come true. And she's like, yeah, I'm so excited. This is gonna be amazing. So I spent a couple of hours just devising a plan for that new date. Blah blah, and then what happened. I mean, everyone can have their opinion on it, but I think as an athlete, you're put in certain positions sometimes where you have two choices: you either crack on, deal with it, accept it, or you complain and moan or whatever. And Ellie's just cracked on and dealt with it. And yeah, it's not my place to say what I think of the situation. I'm just concerned about Ellie and making sure she becomes the best version of herself for when the fight's happening, which it looks like it is. It is going to happen.
10th of June.
Possibly. I don't know if anything's been officially announced.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks like the fight's going to get over the line, which was initially the concern, because the other side were like, well, no, we've agreed this, so we're no longer going to have the fight. But Ellie's, I love Ellie. She's such a fantastic person. She's gone through a pretty hard time dealing with this, but she's really, really knuckled down and working hard. And she's really focused on the fight and becoming world champion. I believe she can do, and I believe this will just be one of many world titles she wins. Shane's done a great job with her, getting her to where she's at, and I've added some value to that, keeping her healthy and making her physically stronger. So hopefully we can get a stoppage soon down the line, and then yeah, I'm excited for that fight, and just the value that I've added over the last few weeks with her is just to try and keep her head on track and just be like, focus on the big picture, not these little details that are trying to derail you. Because, you know, it's just the journey to success isn't a straight line, right? You go up and down, up and down. So it's
How
only
hard
going to add
can that be
another.
though, for you to
It's
try
tough.
and keep a fighter like you're really looking forward to something, like you said, the
Yeah.
extensions, the camps turn into weeks to months. How do you try and, you know, you're part of a team, you've got to motivate that fighter, you know, when they're doing how many reps, when they're getting up whatever time of the morning, when they're still training twice or three times a day. How do you try and pull them in to say, come on, we've just got to stay at it, we've got to do this, keep your head up, all of that stuff, when a fighter's really like frustrated and kind of like downtrodden?
I think at first, from my perspective as a coach, it's about building a really good relationship with that athlete, whether it's Ellie or anyone else, where you can understand when they walk in the gym after a couple of seconds, you know where their head's at. So it's like, okay, maybe we've got a really good plan for the session, but mentally she's not there. So let's have a little bit of banter. Let's have a laugh.
Okay.
Ellie loves taking the piss out of the clothes I wear. So maybe I'm like, all right, she's
I
having a
wonder
tough week.
why.
um, and then, you know, the other day she came in the gym, she was a bit down because this was when obviously the new broke and we just had a bit of banter. And I said, don't worry, come on, let's do like some pad session. I got some pads, so I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but we had a laugh. And we changed the environment, we changed the
Good.
you know, the situation, how she's feeling. So then she forgets about that and just enjoys it. Unfortunately, like the gym we have, where we're based out of UEL, like University of East London, is there's loads of different athletes from loads of different sports, and at various times everyone goes through tough times, injuries, you know, whatever it may be, and the guys work out in the gym at the same time, and they become friends, and they can motivate each other, and like the basketball girls, like Ellie has banter with everyone. Some of the football players. I mean, it's funny. I train football players and referees at the same time, and that's quite amusing. But it's just a nice environment. So they're walking into an environment that isn't their boxing gym, and they can maybe
All right.
they can focus on the strength training and take their mind away from like the issues that are going on. And yeah, a good coach can cultivate an environment that allows the athlete to get done what they need to get done. And not every day you have to go balls to the wall. Some
Okay.
days you can throw the plan out the window and be like, let's get your mind right. So let's go do something different, something a bit fun but challenging, or you get what I mean? And then they leave with a smile on their face and remotivated and energized. And one thing we have at the gym is every fight recently that Ellie's had, we draw a little smiley face on the wall. Maybe not a smiley face, and then we write the name of the boxer. So that's her little target for when we throw med balls at the wall. So there we've got like 3 faces now. So we got to put a 4th one up there once this fight gets over the line, and then you know, little things like that just make it a bit more enjoyable.
It's so interesting to know. So, guys, you've got Duncan, who is kind of like described him, you know, he's a CEO, he's an entrepreneur, he owns his own business, he's got staff underneath him, he trains athletes, not just boxers, he travels around the world to cover all of this. I mean, because you've got so much spare time, Duncan, what do you do for yourself? What do you do to relax? How do you wind down? Because it sounds to me this is chaos, but this is a really busy schedule. So what do you do for yourself?
Um, I really enjoy supporting the athletes I work with. So I'm a big basketball fan. I'm a big basketball junkie. Like, so I'll go watch the basketball games. Like yesterday, the London Lions. So I work for the London Lions, which is the professional basketball organization in London. They had the men's team were in the playoffs for the European Cup. I'm sitting there training Lawrence with my laptop on, watching their game because I enjoy doing that, supporting my guys. Shout out to Leon, who is their S&C coach. And yeah, I have 2 bald cats, Sphinx cats. Long story why I have them, but you know, I chill with them at home. They're cool. They're getting looked after. Someone's house sitting now looking after them. And just I spent some time with some friends. I'm fortunate enough to have traveled around the world, loads of different places. I've got friends in loads of different countries. So if I do get a window of opportunity, I'll travel. I'll go to Croatia. I'll go to Switzerland, go to Canada or whatever and visit some friends that live there. And yeah, I mean, I'm a single man, so my time is my own. Like, so I don't have anyone to give my time to other than myself when I have it. So I really enjoy my work. I probably work too much, but you know what? I really enjoy it. And when I do feel like I'm getting burnt out, I'll say, all right, I'm going to take a little bit of time. And I've got an amazing group of coaches at UEL. So I've got Yusuf. So Yusuf's the SSC coach that works with Dan Aziz, Denzel Bentley, Chris Bork. A shout out to Denzel, who's got his fight this weekend
He has
as well. Stuart, he's one of my coaches. He works predominantly in football. And as a bit of basketball, he took over one of my old roles with a basketball team. And then I've got Milan and Lawrence. They're my coaches. So they're holding things down at work, which allows me to come here and support one of my athletes. And yeah, I enjoy what I do. So I never feel like, I'm being boring or I'm not utilizing my time well. I went to Morecambe pre-Manchester fight with Lawrence, and I was so bored because there was nothing to do outside of training, because I always like to do something. So at least now we're in Florida, but it's rained every single day. But I've been out. I had a couple of drinks, bit of food with the manager, and just kind of chilled. And it's been nice, a bit of a reset, even though I'm working.
I like it. Listen, Duncan, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I knew it'd be an interesting conversation anyway. When you meet someone,
conversation, I talk
yeah,
too much.
but it's like, when you meet someone and you look at them and you think, yeah, I think I'll be able to talk to them, because it's not everyone you can do that with. I feel like even though we've maybe spoken for maybe an hour or whatever, yeah, almost an hour, it's been interesting, and I feel like I've learned a little bit as well. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Your socials, not that I can imagine you taking on any more athletes at the moment. However, you've got a business. How can the fans, how can somebody that's thinking about getting into S&C, somebody that may want to work for you or whatever, how can we get in contact with you?
So basically, I don't use Twitter too much. I use it just to stalk people and stalk athletes or whatever, and just
Yeah,
see
Twitter's
what
a
they're getting up
strange
to.
place.
But on Twitter is Do Training. It's a DO Training. I've got Instagram. I have my own personal account, which is private. It's just lots of pictures of me and my cats and my interesting clothes. And then my business page is Do Training as well on Instagram. So they're probably the two best ways to contact me. I mean, I run an internship program, so any aspiring coach that wants to kind of get involved, just shout me. Like I said, I've got a great team around me, and we love having new faces in the gym, just asking questions. Athletes, again, I try to never say no to an athlete. I try to always accommodate as best they can. If they're willing to invest in themselves, i.e. they're willing to pay for the service, we can always find a solution, either with myself or one of my team. Because ultimately we're here just to kind of help people achieve their goals. So that's kind of what we want to do. So yeah, if anyone wants to message me on those Twitter or Instagram, I'll get back to them at some point.
We love it. Listen, Duncan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, I'm Abs of October Red Boxing. You may be watching this on YouTube or listening to it on Apple Podcasts, or even both. You may want to listen to it twice, who knows? But Duncan, you've been a fabulous guest. I look forward to seeing you again, even though I'm not sure when that's going to be, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be at the Bournemouth card, but it's been an absolute pleasure, Duncan.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Yeah, it's like I said, I talked a little while, but hopefully it's come out right.
Hi, and thank you for watching October Red Boxing. Like, subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. You can also find us on Instagram at October Red Boxing and on Twitter, October Red UK. And remember, at October Red, we stay ready.